Hi, fans of high-quality entertainment. So a couple of days ago, I watched on Prime Video Paul McCartney's documentary Man on the Run. It mainly focuses on the late 60s, the breakup of the Beatles, and then Paul and Linda, of course, starting their, they got married and their relationship, living in Scotland, forming the band Wings, and it goes through the 70s, talks about most of the albums, some more than others, and it ends around 1981, 1980, 1981, with the drug bust in Japan. And overall, I really liked the video. No real complaints. What I really liked about it was there was, quite a bit of footage that I'd never seen before, especially, home movies of Paul and Linda and the family. That was really nice. And kind of talks about, the struggles of starting the band Wings. And of course, his first solo album, McCartney, the critics didn't like it and some fans didn't like it. And then Wings Wildlife, which once again the critics did not like and a lot of fans didn't like at the time. I do remember, when McCartney came out in 1970, it was a bit of a shock because it was so different from the Beatles. It was, not this massive production like there was on Abbey Road. But through the years, for a lot of fans, you just, not that I didn't, me and my brothers liked the album, but it wasn't what we were expecting, right? And, a song like Maybe I'm Amazed was as good as any Beatles song. But through the years, it just has, it's grown in stature, I feel, with fans and critics. And the same with Wings Wildlife and even Red Rose Speedway. And also, Paul talks about the breakup of the Beatles and how he was kind of, John Lennon. I don't want to give too much away of the documentary, but most Beatles fans know all this anyway. I do, there wasn't really a lot that I learned from the documentary, but it was still enjoyable. And like I said, lots of footage I'd never seen before. But John Lennon was the one that said, I'm leaving the Beatles. And that was in 1969. But they kept it kind of hush-hush for a few months into 1970. And then, I guess Paul just at some point said, well, if John's not going to say it, I'm going to say it. So, that all went to the press and everything and the public. And so for a lot of people, Paul was blamed for breaking up the Beatles when it wasn't really, I'm sure he wanted to keep the Beatles together. I don't know about George or Ringo, but the way Paul is. Paul would have stayed in the Beatles forever, probably. And, some of the band members in Wings, they come and go. Of course, Denny Laine stayed for quite a while. And some of the members were saying, Paul wanted this to be a real band. But when your leader is friggin' Paul McCartney of the Beatles, you're always going to be, like a hired hand, even Denny Laine in a way. Although at least Denny Laine wrote some great songs for Wings, right? But I think Paul realized in time that it was his band and he was the main guy. And even sometimes you'd see Paul McCartney and Wings, right? And it's just interesting to see what he went through. He's pretty honest in the documentary. It's not all whitewashed. When he was going to Africa to record Band on the Run, a couple of the band members the night before quit. And, he was really angry at the time. And who can blame him, right? But he over time, he got over that, I guess. And it's just, you don't really think what, all of the Beatles, of course, but what Paul went through with the Beatles breakup. He was so depressed, living on the farm in Scotland and all that, and drinking too much and everything. But he had Linda McCartney with him, and Linda's really shines in this documentary too, right? And then, near the end of the documentary, they talk about, of course, when John Lennon was murdered, and the day after the murder, Paul's leaving the studio. He's, of course, in shock, right? And the press is at him, asking him questions. And at the end of that, he said, "It's a drag, isn't it?" Kind of, flipping it off almost. But he was in shock, right? So I've never, ever, even like Sean Lennon said, never thought anything negative about him saying that. He wasn't in a good place, right? And I did get emotional at the end when, Paul's talking about John. And thankfully, my spirits were lifted after, it gets a little depressing, right? And then it goes into about McCartney too, and then you see the video of coming up, and you see Paul McCartney as dressed up as Ron Mael of Sparks on keyboards, and I always love seeing that. It was nice to see that in the documentary. So yeah, just overall, I really liked it. I would, if I was rating it out of 10, I would give it at least an 8 out of 10. It was a really good documentary. And speaking of Prime Canada, I'm not sure about the US or anywhere else, but SCTV, one of my all-time favorite comedy series, is coming to Prime Canada March 3rd, so in 2 more days. And I think 6 or 7 seasons of it. So I'm really looking forward to that. And that is it. If you have seen Man on the Run, let me know what you think of it or thought of it. And also, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it because it was really, really good. And it was about, I think it was 1 hour, 55 minutes. So not too long and not too short. Kind of went quickly through some of the albums though, but overall I was very happy with it. So 2 thumbs up for Paul's Man on the Run.